Sylvain Mansotte is CEO of Whispli, which he co-founded after he uncovered one of the largest corporate frauds in Australia a few years ago. And he realized that existing whistleblowing channels hadn't really been created with the whistleblower in mind. Very few problems were being reported or investigated because of difficulties reaching informants to try to get more evidence from them. Whispli is a secure, anonymous, two-way communication and case management SaaS platform. So, how transparent should companies be with their stakeholders, consumers, their boards, their suppliers, their buyers, when problems occur? Sylvain can tell us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So yes, my name is Sylvain Mansotte. I think we could change the title to Trust and Transparency, what can be learned from a whistleblower, turned investigator, turned entrepreneur. That was back 2012. I was in Australia. I spent 13 years in Australia, originally from France, and got a job in a very large organization in mining, construction, and engineering. And 2 months in, I was in procurement. My background is procurement supply chain, so I'm very close to what a lot of you in this audience actually do on a daily basis. And my role when I first got that job in that company was to actually know where the money was going. We were spending dozens of billions of dollars a year, and we just didn't have a clue where the money was going. And so I had a bunch of analysts crunching some data and then getting back to us with some suppliers in different categories. And every couple of days we were just going through those spend. And my attention, I got some focus on a few of those vendors for different reasons. And one of them was just a cottage. And a cottage for me is like a B&B where you just put your people to bed at night. Except that this one, we were spending $2.2 million in the previous 12 months, and I thought, well, it must be a bloody big cottage, or there's something wrong with it. And so I took a couple of those, suppliers and spent with me and gave a call to accounts payable to know what was behind those invoices. In that instance, it was definitely a cottage, which was a valid entity, except that we were actually paying for consulting services. And that's really when I just couldn't connect the two dots. And the amount on those invoices was going from anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 pretty much every 2 weeks for 12 years. Now, I went and looked on the internet to see what I could find about that company, and I got a name. So I got lucky. I just took that name and put it in the company directory just to see the face of a man that I actually interviewed 3 weeks before. And that's when my whole life went upside down. I interviewed that gentleman who was a GM finance for that organization, been there for 30 years. It was 6 months to retirement. And I interviewed that person because my role in the early days was just to know how we were buying product and services for my company. And he just happened to be the one in that part of Australia that was running procurement for many years. And so I got to learn who he was, and he was married and still is, and had a daughter and still has. And I was faced with the biggest decision I have made in my entire life, which was I was like the guy holding the gun, and I had two options: either I pull the trigger or I walk away from the situation. And in those 12 years, at least 50 to 100 people saw exactly what I saw, and no one said nothing. And so the first thing you believe is, I must be wrong. I'm new here. It's been 2 months. I'm still on probation. My wife is pregnant with baby number 3. And it doesn't sound like a good idea to actually say anything because apparently nobody said nothing. And in our society, usually the majority is pretty right. So what do you do next? I actually went onto the internet. It took me 30 minutes to find out the code of business conduct. Went through that. In there was embedded a whistleblowing policy. Went through that. And I was given the best gift ever, which was access to a so-called external whistleblowing provider offering the full blend of reporting channel you can ever imagine. I had a hotline, a fax number, a PO box, an email address, and a form on the internet. And of course, that was on top of the open door company policy that only works on paper, not real in real life. And so, great, I've got my lovely French accent, and I'm hoping that it's not bothering you too much right now. But I thought if I do dial that number, it's not going to take too long for that person on the phone to actually figure out that I'm not an Aussie. So that's maybe not a good plan. And then what went on was, I'm going to talk to someone that's not from my company, and my belief was that I was wrong, like, because no one can steal $20.7 million over 12 years without no one noticing it, because it's written black on white, fraud. So I don't want to tell someone external that's going to go back to management, that's going to come back to me and say, hey, you the newbie, what did you say to that guy? Well, this is not fraud, please get out of here. So the option of the hotline did not work. You can't submit evidence on the phone. I don't know if you ever tried to put paper in the phone, but it just usually doesn't go through. And if you ever call back, you know what? You're going to speak to someone else because it's a call center somewhere, and it's very stressful to actually call a stranger. You don't know how many questions they're going to ask you, and so I didn't take that option. The fax, what a beautiful invention. I was probably 35 years old when I uncovered the fraud, and even at that age, I never used a fax in my entire life. And even if I knew I had to use one, it would have been 308 invoices to go through, and what if the person at the other end ever reply and I'm not next to the fax machine? So it didn't work. The PO box, it's like, I'm not the guy that likes to write letters, but anyway, if I did write a letter and put those invoices into a nice thick envelope and put that in the mail, what is the guarantee that it actually goes somewhere and that the person that's going to receive the envelope knows what to do with it? They can't reach out to me once it's in the mail. And what if someone already did it? So it didn't work for me. The email address, it's obviously not really anonymous, and it never crossed my mind at the time that I could actually create a fake Gmail or Yahoo Mail account or whatever other email accounts. And the form on the internet, they can trace my IP address. So I was kind of in that vicious circle where I wanted to say something, but I just didn't want to be the target. And so I was left with one option. And please remember that what I'm saying right now is I'm actually not recommending anyone to use that option, is I went to my manager. The reason why I did that was because she was new. She'd been there 5 months. She's the one that got me the job. And I trusted her. And so trust is definitely key to what's going to come next. I just went to her office and said, hey, Visna, this is what I'm seeing in the system. Do you see the same thing? And within 5 minutes, she went to the office of the CEO. And the next morning, that GM of finance was interviewed by HR. And a few weeks later, he copped 12 years behind bars. The side story there is if you ever want to commit a crime, I'll suggest you do it in the US, where I live now, because you may have heard of a company called Enron, which is a massive collapse in 2001. It was about $70 billion. And one of the person behind that scandal actually copped 10 years behind bars and got out of prison after 5. So there's different rules in different countries. But that gentleman that I happened to interview, is still behind bars. So that's the other side effect of being a whistleblower, is you have to deal with your own conscience of, I've destroyed someone's life. For me, he's still a good guy. He just went off for a bit too long. And I destroyed his family and his circle of friends. Now, I might not be the one responsible for what he did, but I'm definitely the one who made the report, and I need to deal with that on a daily basis. So where I got lucky is that most whistleblowers, and I don't know if there's anyone that's willing to raise their hand in that audience, we're usually pretty shy and we usually don't do anything after that because we usually lose our job. In my case, I got promoted. I didn't get a pay rise, and I'll insist on that because I was not looking for one, but I got a promotion. They asked me if I wanted to become a risk manager / internal auditor, and I said, guys, I've got no clue what you're asking me to do, but it sounds like fun, and I'll do it. So I became that guy who could actually sniff around, and over the course of 2+ years, I ran about 50 investigations for that company, and it was astonishing. Every single time I was able to pinpoint to a potential whistleblower, I got pretty much the same answer, is I will not speak up. I fear for myself, my job, and my family. Oh, that was really close to my heart because I had that same feeling before. And I can't blame anyone for not, speaking up. But I came to the conclusion that, in a company, you've got 4 categories of people. You've got the one that go and get a job, and they can see misconduct and wrongdoing. And because they've got the right level of education and assurance, they just turn around and get a job elsewhere. Then you've got the other category of people that go and get a job. and they can see the same thing, and they say, ooh, I need to pay the mortgage and put food on the table, and it's not going to be that easy to find a job like this ever again, so I'll stick to the job. But then usually you see the productivity and employee morale going downhill fairly quickly, but they will never say a word just because of fear. The third category are the people that will go and get the job. They can see the same thing and they say, they all do it, so I'll put my finger in the pie and blend in. And trust me, there was a lot of that happening in the organization I was working for. And the issue is you all become part of it, so you're never going to dub in on anyone else. And the fourth bucket was the whistleblower, and I felt really, really lonely in that bucket for quite some time. And that's really when, after that experience of being a whistleblower to become a risk manager or whatever you want to call it, I realized there was a big gap, because in any organization, you've got your best asset are people. They're all here to help. There might be one or two rotten apple here and there, but your best asset are your people. They want to do good. They want to help the company. They want to help the organization, and we just prevent them from speaking up. And so the reason why people don't speak up, the main one is the fear of not knowing what's going to happen to yourself once you make that first report. What is going to be the response from the company? And before that, it's even your own self as being in doubt of whether what you're about to actually raise as a concern is actually happening. Or because not all whistleblowers have the full picture on a situation. They may have a narrow picture of something and suspect something is wrong, and they just don't know. And so they blame themselves before anything, and most often they just don't speak up. So fear is definitely the main thing that prevents anyone from speaking up. The second one that affects a good portion of whistleblowers is the shame. And you'll see that quite often in cases of bullying, harassment, or sexual harassment, where not only I've got that fear of not knowing what the company is going to tell me when I speak up, but I'm going to feel the shame because I have to go through that event again and talk about it to a total stranger. And from that moment onward, I know that everybody will be aware of it. So you can go back to Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein, or why do we wait decades before women come out and start speaking up? Guess what? They had the same fear, and on top of that, they had the shame. But it only took one to come forward and speak up for all those women to come out. And I'm not saying they're all victims, but I'm saying they can't be all fake or false positive. So that's just some takeaways from you to understand what goes on in people's mind and what we, why our hotline is maybe not working that well, or why we don't, it took us years before we actually uncover something in our organization. So now, whistleblowing is not something that's going to happen to most of you, thankfully. But it happened to me, and I've learned a lot from other whistleblowers and perpetrators or fraudsters or crooks. And what I've learned is that no matter what the tool you're going to be facing when the time comes that you might actually become a whistleblower, which, by the way, you will not know that you will become a whistleblower until after the fact, most likely, because it's just not, you're just doing your job and you bump into something and you just want to speak up. You don't have a light bulb moment saying, oh, I'm about to become a whistleblower. It's only after the fact that you realize that. So whistleblowing will always be a terrifying event, which means no matter what reporting mechanism you're going to have in front of you, most likely you will not trust it in the first instance because you haven't used it before. It's the first time that we put in front of you a 1-800 number, whatever that phone number is for you to call. And so most of us will just never use it, whether it's that or my whistleblowing platform called Whispli or any other system for that matter. So what can make a difference so we can engage with our people? And why do we want to engage with our people? The main thing for an organization is, yes, to do good and to have transparency and visibility across your operations because you want to know what's going on. It can impact your workforce, it can impact your brain, your reputation, your financial. So most of the companies that we're doing business with, they want to do good. And they're missing that key element of being able to engage with their workforce in an effective manner. And so what we've created is something that is not rocket science. It's enabling people to engage into what we call trusted conversations. And that can be super broad. It can start from saying, hey, I'm working 16 hours a day for the last few weeks and I can't get the work done and I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. and I don't know what I'm doing. And most people, when they experience things like burnout, they usually don't tell anyone. And it's usually too late when the company is aware of it. So the ability to engage in those trusted conversations, that can be something really basic, like, hey, I'm starting a new job in that massive company, and I'd like to know if I can take a week vacation in the first few months. Most of us will never ask the question to HR or the management. But what if you could actually ask that question anonymously, and it's being triaged to the right people in the organization to give you an answer? And the answer might well be, hey, usually we don't let our employees take any vacation within the first 6 months, or it could be, you know what, we can't care less. You've got 3, 4, 5 weeks a year. You can take them whenever you fancy if your manager is happy. But it's all about being able to reach out and asking questions that might sound silly, but most of us will face that at some point in our life. But if you can engage with your employees in a secure and anonymous fashion at different points in your life, then when the day comes that you say, hey, I saw Joe Block working out of the office for the last 4 weeks, every Friday at 5 p.m. with 3 laptops under his arm. Is that okay? Here is a photo of it. That's called whistleblowing. And management had come back and say, it's actually not okay, and thanks, we'll take care of it. So those moments when things are becoming more challenging, which we would categorize as being whistleblowing, if you've got a tool that has already engaged your workforce on a regular basis and that people trust, then they will be more likely to actually speak up. So you want to overcome the fear and the shame. You can do that using technology. Now you need to make it in a way that is appealing to the people. So what we've done is create an anonymous inbox, no different to a Gmail or Yahoo Mail for whoever is using that. And the idea being that you actually make up the username and password using whatever you fancy, so it's not linked to your identity. Now you can access that inbox by scanning a QR code, like Will was showing on his screen before, or clicking on a URL link and filling in a short form that's configured by your organization, and tell them what you're going through, and attach whatever evidence you may want. But every conversation that you start is anonymous by default from your safe inbox. We give you an avatar. So you might be the gray monkey today talking about a bullying case, and 3 months later you might start another conversation talking about a suspicion of fraud, and you might be the gray giraffe. You can communicate like on WhatsApp using that technology, and build the trust with the company. And the company usually wants to help. They're going to say, hey, we don't want our people to get bullied, and we want to take action. We can help you. And they're going to create that trust and build the trust, so the person hopefully will come forward with their name. If they do so and give away their name on that conversation, they will know who is behind the gray monkey report, but they still don't know who is that it's the same person that actually reported something else later on. So the ability to use a single safe inbox, similar to your Gmail or your Yahoo Mail or your Outlook, to have anonymous, secure communication and start building the trust with your company is the key of the success. So today, we can see our clients, whether using Whispli directly with their people or using it in their supply chain, to make sure that workers in the supply chain can actually reach out to the auditor, to the quality control company, sometimes to the end clients, using that technology in their own language or dialect. And that's how we actually manage to get 3 to 4 times more reports than using traditional mechanisms. So this is what I had to tell you. Happy to talk about my own story whenever you feel comfortable if you feel comfortable to do that. But really, transparency and visibility, I think, is key to any business out there. A lot of companies want to do good. They're just missing the right tool to engage with their people. Thank you.